Alright, hello. See if my camera goes funny again. No, okay. So, right, this is economic growth. Now we've done a camera angle a bit differently today, so hopefully you can see it a bit better. Okay, so today we're going to be doing about economic growth. Now we're going to be defining economic growth, real versus nominal GDP, the determinants, short versus long, GDP versus GNP, calculating GDP, the economic growth, problems of doing that, advantages, disadvantages, as we said. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is define economic growth. So I'm just going to explain to you now. Economic growth is the rate of change of GDP. There are two types. There is short and long. Short is caused by an increase in aggregate demand. Long is caused by an increase in the productive capacity of the economy. There is real GDP and nominal GDP. Real GDP is the value of money at constant prices, and nominal GDP is the value of goods and services at market prices, which includes the rate of inflation. So hopefully you've got that. If you haven't, you can just rewind it and note it down again and we'll go over it. So the first thing we're going to do today is GNP and GDP. Yeah, GDP over here. We've got GNP over here. We have to ask ourselves, well, what are these two? Well, GDP is the value of all goods. I put G and S, that's goods and services, by the way. So all G and S. So value of all goods and services produced in one economy Now that includes foreign firms that are producing in the UK, but it doesn't include UK firms that are producing outside of the UK. So this kind of tells you what GNP is going to be. So GNP is the value of all goods and services, or G&S, produced by. Now, instead of saying multiple economies, because we know they're all produced by one country's economy, what I'm going to do is say produced by factors of production, produced by countries' own factors of production. Factors of production. So that's the difference between GDP and GNP. So we can cross off economic growth, we've gone through that. We can cross off GDP versus GNP. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go on to real versus nominal GDP. So real, oh wait, I've already said that actually. Yeah, I can cross that off as well, we've gone through that. So ways of calculating GDP or economic growth. Oh no, GDP, sorry. Well, so yeah, we could contribute to both, but we're going to go with the economic growth one. So, ways of calculating economic growth. We can do the output. These are all different types of approaches, by the way. So we've got output approach, we've got the income, and we've got the expenditure. Now these are three ways. Two of them you've got to be a bit careful of. The other one, sorry, it's time for a good old well-earned cup of whatever this is. Oh, nice. So, two of them we've got problems. The other one is fine, but I've got to be a bit careful. So the two we've got to be careful with are, I just put a star next to them, is output and income approaches. And the output approach measures the value of all the outputs produced in an economy. So therefore the output includes all the output of all the sectors in the economy. And you may want to just give that a bit of thought. So it includes, for example, let's take car industry. It includes the output of the value of all the cars produced in an economy. And if you think of a car, it entices loads of different materials inside of it. For example, in a car we have rubber for the tyres, we have metal for the shell of the body, and plastics and leather maybe for the inside of the car, depending on what car you have, obviously. So, because you may have like air, you may have just air as the car, and you know, sitting around as a kid walking around on air. So you've got to be careful. As I said there's many factors of the land resources that are put into a car, and if you think they are entirely separate industries in the economy. So there are different types of industries for the tyres of cars or rubber, the value of the industry for steel if a car is made of steel, or carbon fibre if it's made of carbon fibre, or plastic for the interior. So there are all these different output of industries. Now if you calculate the value of a car, then you calculate the value of the output, the steel, the tyres and the plastics, which I said, or the leather for the inside of the car. So you're combining all them different outputs. Now they're outputs on their own, as I said, so you can't count them twice. You can't count them as part of the car industry and then count part of the industry which they are from. So therefore you've got to be careful of double accounting. Just put double accounting. Now the income approach. This value measures the incomes of individuals in a given economy. Hopefully you can see that alright. Now the incomes, there's many ways a person will receive income. The way that is measured in calculating GDP or economic growth is the income from a wage or a firm. Well, yeah, income from a wage, which is from a firm, or a salary if the worker is paid on a salary. But either way, it's some kind of wage that is given by a firm or an employer. But that's not the only way people can receive an income. People can receive an income of, we mentioned it before, about state benefits. They can receive one about state benefits, but we don't calculate that as GDP. And that's purely because the income of these pensions is an expenditure of the government. So we can't include the state pensions. Or I think a better way to refer to these is transfer payments. And maybe say, how will I say transfer payment? Well, a transfer payment is where it's a bit like the Robin Hood effect in a sense. So you've got the rich taxes from the poor, and they're giving to the rich taxes from the rich, and given to the poor in the form of state benefits. So they are also known as transfer payments. And there's not really one to watch out for in expenditure, but that's just the aggregate demand sort of thing. Aggregate demand, just by AD. We'll spend another video going through AD and all its components, if you like, so we can calculate, get rid of calculating GDP. So that means we've got the problems, the determinants, the short versus long, and the advantages and disadvantages of economic growth still to go through. So how do we, what are the problems in calculating GDP or economic growth? Well, the first one is the population change. I just put determinant problems. Sorry about that. You know, as popular as I am, I get phone calls all the time as I'm doing these clips. So as I said, what are we going on about for? Oh yeah, problems. So problems in calculating the economic growth. So the problems in calculating economic growth is the population size. So I just put population. So we've got the disadvantage, more or less, of population size. So just because GDP has increased, this could have been because of a change in population. As more people can contribute more to the economy, so it may not have actually grown in size per se. And then we've got price changes. Now, price changes are all to do with inflation, which we will cover in a later video. And then we have real GDP problems, or real changes. And this is caused by something called, sorry, I just put the little thing coming off, underground economies. Now, underground economies are economies which the government doesn't know about. One reason of this could be that whatever the individual is doing is considered to be illegal. So that is one way. So, and another problem in determining real GDP could be the quality and quantity. So I'm trying to do this so my head's not in the way. And quantity produced, I just put P. And now that means, say, for example, you've got a video game. Now, when games come out, generally for Xbox, or PC games, they are very expensive at first. So you don't have to produce that many to increase the value of the goods and services, because in essence we are talking about the monetary, or the money value of all the goods and services. So if they decrease in value, we have to produce more of them to look like the economy has stayed the same. So that is a disadvantage, of course. Another problem we have is defence expenditure. We'll just put defence, E. Now, defence expenditure is a problem because it's not calculated as GDP, and this is purely because economic growth is also considered as a way of increasing the quality of life, because if economic growth increases, it brings about benefits, which we'll talk about in a minute. So, such as quality of life. So, your defence expenditure, if the government's spending more on defence, it means you're probably going to be in a war. And now if you ask anyone in the war, their quality of life's not going to be very good, even though government spending has increased, which would increase aggregate demand, which would increase short-term or actual economic growth. So, we've got defence expenditure. Another one's externalities. Basically the same, they are not factored into GDP because we don't really conserve them or judge them in effect. So we've got externalities, and then we have as we sort of said before in one of our earlier tutorials, the how do we word it? Unequal distribution of income. Now, we talked about this in our previous video, and we sort of explained how that was the case. Basically in our macroeconomic objectives video, I did talk about how that affected the likes of you and I. So we've got unequal distribution of income. And then we have composition of goods. Now for an economy to grow in the long term, then there are two types of goods that we can produce. We can produce capital goods, which will increase the long-term economic growth and should raise living standards in the future. But obviously that's going to decrease it for us now. And if we wanted to increase it for us now, we'd produce something called consumer goods, which is goods that you would use on a day-to-day basis. So, composition of goods. And that links into our one of our disadvantages of economic growth, which is opportunity cost. I almost said external cost then. So composition of goods and quality of life. Quality of L. Now, you may say, well, surely if our economic growth increases, then our quality of life increases. Well, economic growth is concerned with the material life that you could afford. Now many people hopefully would think that their family is more important than materials, so they would actually prefer to spend more time with their family and less time at work. However, this obviously would present benefits as well as negatives. The benefits would be more time with your family, obviously improved quality of life, but the disadvantage with that is that you're on a lower income because you're spending less time at work, so you're earning less amount of money. So obviously this would implicate on economic growth and actually even possibly decrease it. So you've got your quality of life there. That's the main main bits of economic growth. Now I'll just rub all this out to give myself a bit more room for what we're going to go on to next. Sorry that board's a bit of a mess. I need to get a new rubber, so still bits everywhere. So we've done the problems. Now we need to know the determinants of economic growth. Now the determinants of economic growth, there's only 3 of them. It's not that many to remember. We've got our land, so our labour force or anything that's on the land. Oh wait, actually labour's a separate one. So we've got labour. Our land is our renewable, non-renewable resources, labour and technological improvements. And we've got our technological improvements. So the determinants. There's only 3 of them. So the more the technical advanced, the more efficient our resources are, our machines are, so therefore we can make more use of our scarce resources. So that's labour, see, size and skill of the workforce, increased labour productivity, similar sort of thing with efficiency. And land, just more land, more resources. Oil prices could increase. If oil pockets are found, it would reduce oil prices because we have more. But once they're used up, they actually increase in price. Sorry, I'm doing this a lot. So, determinants are gone. Now, we need to know the advantages and disadvantages of economic growth. So, an advantage of economic growth could be increase in goods and services in the economy. And this is because the economy has grown, so there's more choice and there's more incentive for development, so to speak. Obviously, with economic growth, you need more workers to fund the economic growth in terms of the labour force. So, as we use up more workers, unemployment decreases. People become less afraid of their jobs and possibly more motivated. But obviously that's a business term. Low unemployment. We've got increased lifespan. As the quality of goods, quality and quantity of goods and services is increased in the economy, then if you think about it logically, we have an increase in for example, the quality of healthcare, because the government spends more on healthcare, so you have to go to privatised healthcare, and many people choose just to go to the NHS. So the general lifespan of people is increased in the economy. We assume that then. Some people may, decide to not use NHS as much as they should. So when they feel ill, they might just stay at home, even though the NHS may have the resources, they may not be able to get there. So the lifespan of some people may not increase. But on the whole, it should generally increase. So you could put that as a bit of an evaluative statement in your essay if it asks for one on economic growth. Now another advantage, obviously with a high population, governments are able to increase their tax revenue. Now many governments at this point, I just put tax out, would actually lower their tax rates, which would be to do the fiscal policy, as we talked about in our earlier tutorial. So why would a government want to reduce the tax rates? Well, it would make people feel better off. Instead, disposable income increases. Obviously, it could lead to greater consumer expenditure, and obviously, it would prove very politically popular in there's an election coming up, which just like there is in the UK at the moment. So you get your tax revenue, and an increase in business and consumer confidence. There's a B&C, business and consumer confidence. Yeah, so this basically means they are more excited about the future and they are expecting better things, economic growth, more economic growth for example, so they spend more as they are less wary of their jobs, and businesses invest more as they know consumers will spend more. Well, that's what they think because of the increased income, etc. All goes round in a nice circle. So they're the advantages. Now the disadvantages of economic growth. Now economic growth, there's three main ones you need to know about. The main one is opportunity cost, so I'll just put opportunity. And I'm not going to show you how this is shown on the diagram because I feel it's quite because we're going to draw a few diagrams in a bit. If you want me to go over that, just drop a comment on the email on the YouTube video, and I will happily show you one purely on opportunity cost of economic growth. But I'm assuming you know how to do that. External cost, obviously external cost of the wildlife, of the firms building on land that they need for the economic growth, expansion, etc. All goes around in that circle. So external cost. And another one we have is depletion or depletion of our scarce resources. And I've already explained, about oil prices before. So there are main advantages and disadvantages of economic growth. Hopefully you've got them down. I'm just going to rub them off so I can continue the next part of the tutorial and I've got a bit more space. Right, so we've done these two, cross them off. Now the last bit of this tutorial is about short and long economic growth. Now, you must go, well, what's short and long? We have a short kid and an tall kid. Well, not really. Economic growth, short and long. So short, I mentioned this before, it is actual economic growth because it happens in our current moment of time. So we're going to put actual. And our long run economic growth is caused by an increase in the potential output economy. Sorry, my camcorder is running out of battery, just need to plug it in. God's sake. Sorry guys, just up there. It's in my head. Yeah, there you are. This is all economy. Look, I've got watch there and everything. Oh, come on. Oh, great, took a photo. Never mind. Oh, good. Okay, so hopefully that's a bit better for you. So short is actual, which means it happens now. Long is potential, which means it happens in the future. So potential. They're just another way of saying short economic growth and long run economic growth. I just put run underneath, in case you forget that. So how can we show these on diagrams, for example? So we can, short is an increase in aggregate demand. And you need the LRAS curve. Oh, sorry, SRAS, short run aggregate supply, which we will cover in another video. So short run aggregate supply, you've got your aggregate demand, you get your extension in aggregate demand, labour equilibriums, E1, sorry, E1, P1, P, Y, Y1. Now you need to, sorry if you can't quite see that, but you need to make sure that your equilibriums are labelled and your real GDP, so this is real GDP and average price level are labelled adequately, average P. And this is caused by, and the LRAS curve is caused by an increase in long run. Yeah, caused by an increase in productive capacity of the economy. So that's the same an increase in long run aggregate supply. So what do? We draw our downsloping aggregate demand diagram, we draw our upsloping LRAS curve, and our second upsloping LRAS1 curve. That shifts to the right as it's an increase, and this shows you all the benefits of long run economic growth and why it's better than short run economic growth. So let's do short run economic growth. So obviously we've got an increase in economic growth. We just assume, just go with me on that one. Economic G for guys. So increase in economic growth, and obviously should mean a decrease in unemployment. However, economic growth, you can label that on your essay from Y to Y1, and unemployment, you can just say that. But if we look at this section, so the one on the average price level, it's actually increased from P to P1. And as we said before, an increase in price is an example of inflation. So we have an increase in inflation. Obviously, you'd need to express this in real terms in your answer. I'm just giving you a quick overview. So, increase in inflation. And that means conflicting objectives. And this means, I just put conflicting O, and this means a decrease in net exports. However, for the long run, so we've only achieved two objectives. So the increase in economic growth and the decrease in unemployment. However, with this, same increase in economic growth and same decrease in unemployment for the same reasons, Y1, decrease in unemployment. However, this time, instead of prices going up, prices going down. So we can say inflationary pressure has decreased. I'm just going to bet a decrease in inflation. And a decrease in inflation means our increase in net exports and an increase in the balance of payments, which is the same thing. You can say either, but I'm just going to put them both down. Balance of P. Now, how many economic objectives has this achieved? It's achieved economic growth, that's 1. Unemployment, that's 2. Lower inflation, that's 3. Balance of payments, that's 4. So we've achieved, we could say, all 4 macroeconomic objectives. Sorry if it's a bit skewed. I'm doing it on side here. So that is the last bit that we needed to do of economic growth. Hopefully you've stayed with us and you can see where I've got them curves from. We'll see you in the next video, which should be inflation to my reckoning, and then after that we'll do whatever we've got in store for you. I think it's probably going to be the effects of unemployment. We'll see you in the next one.